Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick. Alonzo Duralde, Matt Atchity. There are several movies opening this weekend that are not the Avengers Age of Ultron, and one of them is Albert Maysles' Iris.
Yes, Albert Maysles' Iris is the story or a look at Iris Apfel, who is probably the best way to describe her, the rare bird of fashion in New York. She is originally an interior designer. She has one of the greatest collections of couture costume jewelry, as they say in the movie. And this is directed by Albert Maysles, who directed Grey Gardens, who directed Gimme Shelter, has another movie that'll be coming out and recently passed away. This is a pretty amazing movie, pretty amazing documentary. Let's take a look at the clip.
The rare bird herself, over 75 years of influence in fashion, interior design. The icon, Iris Apfel.
That's so nice to hear. Makes a girl feel like there's still a chance. I don't have any rules because I would only be breaking them, so it's a waste of time.
Iris is an artist. What she uses all of her clothing and her accessories to do is compose a new vision.
He looks very voguey.
She has the most remarkable collection of couture costume jewelry in the United States.
I like to improvise as though I'm playing jazz. I was probably the first woman to wear jeans. Sounds crazy. It was.
I could feel the pulse of her excitement about living.
Mrs. Lohman, the original, said, "You're not pretty, and you'll never be pretty, but it doesn't matter. You have something much better. You have style."
So yeah, this is this really kind of cool portrait of a woman who, as you were saying before, well, she's not exactly a designer. She just has this amazing sense of personal style, so much so that I think she's the first living person to have a Metropolitan Museum of Art Costume Institute show dedicated to her, just to her outfits and like her combinations of these big crazy, necklaces and bracelets and these wild sort of patterns and woolly coats and the big glasses and everything.
Yeah, and whereas we've seen stuff like the September issue, and you get a sense of some of the people in the fashion world are almost unapproachable, and they very much look down on people, and there's this sense of not being able to relate. I felt like Iris is a very relatable person, and she talks about, she's self-deprecating in a lot of places. I mean, she's kind of this, like, just crazy old broad. She's got these great collections. Early on in the film, she talks about how she puts things together and she feels like she's improvising like a jazz musician.
Yes.
And I think you get, one of the cool things about the documentary is you get to see her doing that. You get to see her process, which that's really exciting in any kind of documentary about an artist to kind of get an insight as to how that works.
And I think also people think about fashion as being, you have to have money and you have to have all this stuff. And a lot of it really does boil down to just having an eye for this kind of thing. I mean, I don't, so I really admire that sort of thing. But she's, in a way, she's kind of a cousin to Edie Beale in Grey Gardens. I mean, she's a lot less damaged than little Edie was, but the way that little Edie could take a sweater and turn it into a headdress or a tapestry on the wall that becomes a cape or a skirt, Iris can like take this stuff that you would probably just sort of walk by in a thrift store or in a jewelry kind of shop or whatever, and she just makes it work and creates this personal style. I got to meet her for about 2 seconds at the USA Film Festival last week because they were screening the documentary. And she's 94 and she is traveling to promote this movie. So she is unstoppable. This is not a documentary in the sense of, no one's ripping the lid off Iris. Everything is, it's all, everybody who talks about her adores her. It's all very, laudatory. I kind of put it in a category with, there's sort of been a recent spate of these documentaries about sort of women of a certain age who are still busy and really amazing, like the Joan Rivers doc, the Elaine Stritch one, there was a Carol Channing one. There's a new one about Mary Louise Wilson, the Broadway actress that's going to be playing festivals this summer. It's along those lines. You're not going to learn anything terrible about her or find out that she, did something that was, tragic or whatever. It's just like, hey, here's this one-of-a-kind, eccentric, and she has this eye, and she makes it work for her.
Although, to that point, I don't disagree with you. There are a lot of documentaries like that, and they kind of come off as almost hagiography at some point. This one, I don't feel like that because I feel like, you get a sense of what she was doing as a designer, as an interior decorator and designer early on, and the kind of business she and her husband had making the fabrics and making the textiles. But then you realize that her renown as somebody who puts together these accessories really seemed to come only within the last 20 years, much later in her life. And getting to see that process and see her put things together and stuff that people might not ever pay attention to, and talking and seeing that in action, like when she does the Bergdorf's windows, or the look at the museum displays, or even as they're going through some of the stuff she's giving away to put in storage, and she's talking about, oh yeah, those were vestments from priests, and I was picking those up, and here's what I did to them, and being able to see how not just her eye, but how her mind works as to, I can take a bit of that and a bit of this and a bit of this other thing and put them all together in something that no one else would have never come from or ever considered. And when she talks about, when it all fits her as a person, she talks about how she liked, it was always the most fun to get ready to go to the party.
Right, more than the party itself.
Right?
Yeah. And in addition to the, she talks about it in terms of jazz, but you could look at, in a way, she's sampling,
Yeah, absolutely.
Or even doing like kind of the William Burroughs sort of the cut-up technique where you have, I'm going to half a page from this book and half a page from that book and glue them together, and we're going to make it work.
Right, yeah. I thought that was really fascinating. And, without getting too philosophical, you could talk about what she does fits into a lot of what are typically American art forms, in that they take pieces.
Reappropriation,
rock and roll does that, and hip hop does that, and jazz does that, and these kind of meldings of different pieces. I thought this was really interesting. I really like this. I'm glad you brought up Grey Gardens, because I feel like there's a really interesting back-to-back double feature to watch here. Because on a certain level, I've seen some critics talk about this. Iris is almost where little Edie could have been.
Sure, if she'd been out in the world,
right? Because you get scenes inside her home where it's all this, what a lot of people would consider junk, and it's all this like.
This is a woman who's been around the world several times and just brought home amazing things.
Right, and then she, she talks about going to the Southwest and picking up the same, always patronizing this one particular artist, this one sculptor who was working on these.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then she says something about all of the different pieces she's picked up over the years. And it's like, oh, okay, right. That's somebody who's able to step back and take these disparate elements and see a theme there. It's a fascinating look at somebody who is an artist, and you learn what goes into her process. And a great Albert Maysles film.
Definitely. So yeah, I really enjoyed myself. Numbers, what did you think?
I give it an 8.
I'm going to go 8.5. It is maybe lesser Maysles, compared to some of his classics, and it has this sort of burden placed upon it now that it's that he's passed away. There's only one more film from him we're getting, but I think people should check it out. It's a lot of fun. Even if you are not somebody who thinks you care about fashion or old women, you might like this movie anyway. I think she is inspirational for living the kind of life you want to live, whatever that life winds up being. So it's an 8.3 from us. It has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. People
and
are
to be
digging
clear,
this movie.
A lesser Maysles film is greater documentary for almost anyone else.
It's better than anybody else's best stuff, or a lot of people's best stuff. So, but yeah, check out Iris.